G'day everyone and welcome to another 100 Things Fireside, where we get to interview an industry guru, expert, professional in a given hot topic area in the world of bucket lists so that you can go home and apply everything you learn to your own goals. Now, this week's edition of the Fireside is all about becoming a stunt person, and we're very lucky to be talking to Heidi Schnappauf, who has been in the industry for 14 years. She's been both in TV and film and is an incredible person. She's going to be sharing with us the hustle, how she gained expertise, how she became an all-ability stunt person from a background initially of just being a martial artist, and everything through to getting an agent, and of course her longevity, how she looks after her body even after numerous horrible injuries. This is one not to miss if you're an aspiring stunt person, and thank you so much for being here. We hope you enjoy. Heidi, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to be talking to a stunt person. I've only ever spoken to one other stunt person, and I'm fascinated by everything they're doing.
Oh, great. I'm glad somebody is.
So I ask this question every time at the beginning of the fireside, and I ask it because, we all have like a dream and ambition that starts somewhere, and I'm just always intrigued as to where you started. So do you remember, can you remember, and can you pinpoint a time when you thought, I want to be a stunt person?
I can actually. I can tell you that leading up to that point, it was kind of all signs pointing that direction. But then I was watching the behind the scenes of a movie once. It was one of the Tomb Raider movies actually, and I was watching like Angelina Jolie kicking a pad, and I remember thinking that girl kind of looks like her that she's kicking the pad next to, and I could do that. I could probably help an actor do that or something like that. And upon watching the behind the scenes a little bit more, I come to find that that was her stunt double. And it was like, oh, duh, there are people that do this, that, do the stunts for the actors. They don't do all these things. And it was just kind of, and that was the moment. That was kind of like an epiphany, like, oh, that's a job. And then immediately on Google, like, how do you become a stunt person?
Oh, that's so good. Well, that's what this fireside is. How do we become stunt people? So you were watching this thing. Did you already have the skill of, let's just say, to use your example, kicking a pad? Were you someone who could kick things, or were you just like, wow, what a cool job, I'm going to learn how to kick things? And I guess the question is, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? The skill to kick something or flip over something, and then that leads into being a stunt person? Or would you go, I want to be a stunt person, I must learn everything?
Well, in my personal experience with it, I came from a martial arts background. So I started, and I also came, so I started martial arts when I was very young. So that was kind of, usually someone has some sort of specialty of some sort. So either fighting or gymnastics, or maybe they're a firearms specialist or a skydiver or something like that. And that's kind of how you break in. But then upon your, entry into the stunt world, if that's, the way you want to go, it will behoove you to get what they call all abilities. So that would be like, getting at least the basics of how to drive, how to fall, how to a basic fight, basic fight regimen. And but my avenue into it, I think, was the fact that I had a very, very strong martial arts background, and I was without cameras kind of planning fight scenes since I was a little kid with the boys down the street, doing fight scenes, except I was really hitting them. So, and I would always win. So
I love it. It's so good. So, okay, I'm going to sound silly here, but how would you define a stunt person? Like, to me, it seems like, it's someone who can catch fire easily and who doesn't mind dangling out of a plane or whatever. What actually is a stunt person?
So a stunt person, not to be confused with a daredevil or, someone who does some sort of spectacular thing like walk on a bed of nails on fire, in a nightly show in Vegas. A stunt person, to me, is someone who takes calculated risks. Actually, that was going to be my new company name, Calculated Risk Taker, but it didn't really catch on very well.
I like it.
But yeah, that's exactly how I would describe it. It's someone who takes calculated risks, someone who has some sort of ability. Stunts, especially, I mean, there are live stunts, and then there are film, using a camera, film and TV, which is where most of my experience lies now. But I, started off in the live stunt world, which, your camera is everyone that's looking at you. So you have a bigger lens to kind of cross through if you're doing a fight scene, or if you're, doing a fire, you want it to be more spectacular because you have, thousands of eyes on you, or hundreds, or however many. So being a stunt person needs to be calculated. It needs to be, you need to be trained. Um, and to kind of go back into what you were saying earlier about, what got you into that, category. Like I started off as a martial artist. I saw that behind the scenes thing. I knew I wanted to do it and started from there. So I started with that martial arts background and kind of found other people that had the martial arts background in stunts eventually.
Right.
But I started off by emailing. I would watch movies and write down the names of the stunt people and just did internet searches and emailed probably hundreds of people, and a handful of them actually wrote back. And I just kind of, how you're asking me, I asked them, what do I do? How do I get to the next step? How do I get to the next step?
Oh, that's so interesting. I love how like proactive you are about that. It just seems with any goal, and certainly I found this, it's just about breaking it down into what is the actual next step? What do I have to do? I was about to ask you, for someone who's listening or watching, and they are ambitious and they have this dream of becoming a stunt person, and it sounds as though having some sort of prerequisite of an interest in something, gymnastics or martial artsy or stunt driving. It sounds like that's a prerequisite. Is that right?
It definitely helps. There are people who just are generally athletic, or, I mean, you do have to have some sort of athletic ability because you have to have an instinct or else you become a liability, right? So I'm not going to want to throw somebody in there to fall over a banister 30 times who doesn't really have very good, awareness of their body or, athletic ability in general.
Right.
But there's actually another stuntwoman that I know of who's super, super successful now, and she didn't really have much of a background, but was very persistent and started training with the fight guys. And that's a really good place to start. Basic gymnastics, basic boxing and fighting. That's if you want to see if you kind of have what it takes and if you have that natural ability, to start off with, that's a really great place to start. If you go to a gymnastics class and you can't, do a forward roll on a mat after a couple years, you might want to reconsider.
Yeah, that would probably rule me out. But so you can look after yourself. You can make sure that you are functioning to the best of your ability within one of those given aspects of stunt, if that's how you would say it. But then I really liked how you said you were just proactive, emailing hundreds of people. How do I do this? And
Yeah.
because people want to help, right? So I'm interested again for people going, well, I don't know anyone in stunts. Neither did you, it sounds like, until you
Right.
started to.
So I went on Google, the first thing I did, and I found stunt school. I found a stunt school in Washington, and I found a stunt school in Florida. And I couldn't afford either of them. But the one in Florida kind of intrigued me. It was Kahana Stunt School. And I basically sold everything. I had a drum set, I had some guitars, I had whatever I had, I sold it so that I could pay for stunt school and, get a little used car and drive. I drove to Florida from Pennsylvania. New York, I was in Pennsylvania at the time. Yeah. But between New York and Pennsylvania. And I went to a stunt school. So I kind of knew a couple of people that went to the stunt school that I went to, but still it's a very strange but it's a very members only kind of career. Like, are we sure we want to let her in? That's why I think a lot of people are. And now I realize too, you get put in a tough situation because you don't want to put all this time and effort into somebody, and ask for favors and help people out to just see that they either take advantage of you or, I mean, I guess this is true for any career or anything like this, but because it is such a small community, and I mean, I work with the same people in New York and the same people like when I was in LA. I mean, although it was a bigger market in LA, I knew most of the people in LA. Same thing when I moved back to New York. We all know each other, we take care of each other, you're responsible for each other's lives, so it is kind of harder to break into in that sense.
For sure.
And
so there are stunt schools. It
yes.
reminds me of the X-Men, how all these people with incredible ability get together. You even mentioned before having all abilities. So, you had a martial arts background, but then again, people may have something similar or maybe an awesome driver or something. It's then about expanding into these different areas that perhaps to suddenly have all the abilities. So as well as stunt schools, there are, I'm assuming there must be other resources. Are there? Can
Sure.
you Google, how to fall down a set of stairs?
Uh, that honestly, that's something that you find others that I found others that have done it. And I was in, if you're in martial arts, you take falls all the time. I was an uke, did, Japanese martial arts, and the uke basically is the one that kind of takes the brunt of everything when the teacher's showing a technique and you flip and you fall and they take your wrist and you flip over. So learning all the break falls and the basic, kicks and punches and falling like that, you learned I learned in martial arts, and to always put your chin to the side so that just in case you hit your head, you're not going to snap your spinal cord, which has saved my life
Oh,
on several occasions, but definitely one where I had a very very bad neck injury, and just that having that knowledge and that in my body kind of feeling of keeping your head not directly down in the center when you do a fall, or something like basic things like that. I don't know that there are other places like other than a stunt school where you would kind of meet other people with similar interests and you kind of share, like you said,
yeah.
a lot of people come from different backgrounds. Some are drivers, some are martial artists, and I had a really great experience. It's different for everybody. You don't have to go to stunt school. It's not a prerequisite in the United States. I know in other countries though, there are like registries, there are stunt registries. And now they're making a standard for stunt coordinators
Uh-huh.
in SAG-AFTRA, the the major guild.
Sure.
But yeah, stunt school is not a prerequisite,
Okay.
but definitely someplace to learn
I love it.
basics in everything.
And the other thing I take from that is, like all these goals, if it's important to you, if being a stunt person is important enough to you, you have to make sacrifices. And
Exactly.
so you're
Many many sacrifices. Yeah.
yeah, you're willing to drive somewhere where you don't know people. And these are the things that often put a lot of people off. But quite clearly, your evidence to this, that by making those sacrifices because you're so passionate about something, you get there. And I'm just looking in your background there, and it looks like you picked up every other instrument that you may have previously sold. So it kind of works
Yep.
out with.
Eventually. Yep. I got my instruments back and then some. So
That's amazing. So okay, so we've spoken about being a little bit proactive, some of the skill sets, having all the abilities, linking up with community, a stunt school where you can properly learn how to do all the bits and pieces. So what about turning this now into a profession? Is it similar to acting in the sense that you would have an agent and then you do the castings and it's highly competitive, or are there other ways?
it is highly competitive in that a lot of the work, so it's kind of split into two. I just started five sentences. Here we go. So it's kind of split into two general areas doing stunts for film and television. It's either you're going to be a stunt double, so you're going to be doing the stunts for an actor, or you get hired as a stunt actor. So when you're doubling, obviously you have to be the same height, look like the person. A lot of people don't have imaginations, and let's say I look exactly like some actress, but I have dark hair, long dark hair, and they have short blonde hair or something.
Mm.
If I sent them my headshot, they wouldn't even look twice at it. So, trying to keep, I try to keep as natural as possible, and try to keep my hair long because people can't, for some reason, picture a wig on people, which it makes sense because it's a very fast moving kind of
Mm.
business, right? So if you're doubling, you want to look like the person. If you're acting, it behooves you to have a little bit of an acting background. And I personally, I went to school for acting, and you never tell right now because I can barely get a sentence together. But I went to school for acting, which was super helpful in that, and it actually helps a lot in being a stunt double because when you learn how to act, a lot of the drills they had us do, like, and I went to college for it, so one of the intro to acting was follow a person around the city for a day and then try to walk like them, and get their body type and then bring it to class, and then I want you to embodying another human being and watching how they, some people will put like a dime in the heel of their shoe so that they have a little bit of a limp and they could walk like another person, and they realize, okay, that would help me look like this person who has a hip problem or something. So having the acting background and kind of getting those little tricks and tips about getting into someone else's body, because you want to move like them. It's more realistic if you can move like the actor. For an example of how acting can really influence and enhance being the profession of being a stunt person, even in doubling, would be when I doubled Jamie Alexander for a very long time. It's the longest running gig I've had in one long stretch. But in learning her body movements, and Kai was her stunt double for most of season one. I came in at the end. I came in as a character actually in Blind Spot season one, about midway through. And this is another instance where I'm like an inch and a half shorter than Jamie, and sometimes that's all it takes to not be considered to double somebody. But because I had been on the show and because I had known people and I have a good reputation, they gave me a shot. So I knew I kind of had a shot at it, and I was just going in for a rehearsal to kind of see if it would work out. Knowing that I was going to this rehearsal, I watched every episode up until that point, and I was in my room, TV right here, mirror right here, and watching her and just going back and forth, and watching how she runs and watching how her body moves. And I obviously, as a stunt person, want to hide my face a little bit more. So any opportunity that I saw how she would raise her shoulder or something like that,
I love that. And you got the job because you're clever and smart and proactive and talented.
Well, I tried. And it's funny because one by one, a director or a producer or somebody came by to just kind of check me out in the rehearsal that I was doing. And they're like, "Oh, she moves like Jamie. That's crazy." And I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. It's pretty natural, I guess. It's natural. You just move like Jamie."
The lesson, of course, is just get stuck in and do everything you can. Leave no stone unturned. Do the research, and right. I mean, it's no secret. I mean, it seems to be common for all goals.
Right.
Try your hardest and
doing it
creatively. Yeah.
Yep.
I another guy I know who's a stunt person. I remember him telling me years ago that he used to drive around. His agent called him in the morning and would say, "Hey, these are the movies that are going on in town in LA here," and he would drive to every single lot, try and sneak into the set with the CD.
Hustle.
You call it the hustle?
Call it hustling. Yeah, it's evolving currently. The art of the hustle, and it is a very. I didn't mean to cut you off at all. You're telling the story, but I definitely have experience with that. And while I was driving out to LA, I started in New York. Was just needed to get to someplace different, so I decided to kind of start my career in LA. I remember driving cross country, and one of the people, I had like two or three folks respond to me that I saw their names and I emailed them or Facebooked them, and I'm sure most people thought I was insane or not serious or whatever. But the couple of people that responded, I think because I was doing everything they said to do, they would respond again and say, "Okay, well, you did that, so try this, so try this." And then eventually I was driving cross country. I remember somebody giving you a list of things that were shooting, like, "Oh, you're driving through Houston? This is shooting in Houston. Oh, you're driving through, Austin or Santa Fe? This is shooting there. This is the coordinator. This is blah, blah, blah." I'm like, well, I don't have anything to give to them, but, I could drive by the set or whatever. And I learned, you want to introduce yourself. It's a very unnerving, but also how else are you going to get seen kind of thing, like just putting yourself out there. And a lot of stunts in general is just kind of overcoming some sort of some fear. That's why it's a stunt. That's why you get paid the big bucks, because you're doing the things that people don't want to do, or that require more skill or require more guts. So just getting out there, I think that was probably the hardest part. Getting beat up is the easy part, but getting out there, introducing yourself, bringing a headshot and resume and saying, "Hi, I'm Heidi. I'm new here." That was...
Well, the mental part is fascinating because, I mean, you mentioned it before, it's a very highly competitive industry. You're going to castings. From my understanding of just acting in general, you're getting...
agents and...
agents.
It's different. Different than acting, but...
Yeah, so there's probably a lot of rejection at some point, and then you've got to muster up the courage to go and hustle, as you put it, and say, "Hey, my name's Heidi."
Mm-hmm.
What's your tips around staying motivated, staying optimistic, and just maintaining a good mental attitude to this?
That's a hard one, because that's literally a daily struggle. just in life. And for me personally, I just, struggle sometimes with motivation. But if you find that thing, for me, when I watch a movie, or when I watched this, actually, I think I saw, no, I saw Double Dare a little after that. But when I watched that behind the scenes, I was like, wait, okay, so that's kind of inspiring to me. So I kept that in my back pocket. I kept that DVD with me. When I'm feeling down, or you start to find other things that inspire you, that kind of fuel your fire, for the career. But it just, everything fell into place for me when I saw that. So that's kind of one of the things that I would defer to, or I would look up other behind the scenes videos, or things, or watch more martial arts videos, or watch how to do something, things that inspired me, that I knew I could do, that I could practice.
Right.
And so keeping those in my back pocket for sure would keep me inspired, and just having a goal, actually knowing that you have this list of things that you need to do to get to that goal.
Mm.
It's that's motivational, because you're like, I didn't get to number 6 on this list of 10 before I turn the page, and there's another list of 10. So, always having that carrot in front of you,
Yeah.
that's definitely what kept me going. And that's what everything in my life up until that point, it just clicked. I did martial arts, I did acting, I did this, I did that. And then this is great, because I don't necessarily want this on screen. I like the fact that I'm kind of not the face of the action, but I'm a very good team player. I've always been a good team player, like in sports in high school. I was a basketball player, track and field. I know it's not really team in that same aspect as a basketball player, but you're working with your team. And so I love the idea of working, teamwork in general. So it just kind of, that's how I kind of really came to the conclusion that that's what I want to do. And however anyone else comes to that conclusion, whether it's they saw behind the scenes, or they just really like crashing cars, whatever
Sure.
it may be.
So you always kept an eye on the prize. You always knew what your goals were by the sounds, and that helped you with clarity and purpose, I suppose. And you were also,
Priorities, yeah.
yeah, priorities, and you were tenacious about it. You just kept on going. And yeah, again, it seems so simple when you say it, but we struggle occasionally. So again,
Oh yeah.
someone listening in going, well, I want to be a stunt woman, and I'm a great martial artist. It's the actual steps to get there might seem complicated, but if driven by
It
what you just
it's
explained, it's easier.
it's just that, though. It's just one step at a time. You're not going to be launching up 30 steps at once. You got, one step at a time. And the thing that I see a lot is the people that try to skip steps, and they're the ones that trip over their feet and fall down, and so to speak. It's and not in a good way, not in a way you're going to get a good adjustment.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The,
it's
the acting thing's really interesting to me too, because that seems like
mm,
almost a crucial part as you talk about being a stunt actor and then also mimicking someone's.
yeah, I think it's important.
It seems that way. And I want to ask you then, so how much of it, if there's a balance, let's say, between just being a badass, as you clearly are, versus being, the craft of acting? Is it that they both seem, they complement each
Well, they do. I mean, obviously, if you're a stunt performer, you want to really focus on the physical stuff. But taking an acting class, or even, I mean, I would do. Did I do a play? I did a play in LA. However, if I, excuse me, if anything ever came up with stunts, I would drop it like it's hot, because knowing that you want to be a stunt person and committing to that, that's the number one thing. Is you must, if you want to be successful, that must be your priority. And that, I mean, that's my, take it or leave it. That's my number one piece of advice to anyone who wants to become a stunt performer, is to just know that that's going to be your priority. The second you start saying, well, I wanted to go visit my girlfriend or my boyfriend and not go to this training session, or I didn't want to take this job because it was my mom's birthday, or, you know what I mean? Like a
other.
social obligations. I, for a long time, did not have any sort of outside of work social life. Eventually you have to balance it out. I understand. But as far as, building a career and getting into it, less excuses, the better in general.
I love
There's
that.
a line, there's a line in Hamilton, talk less, smile more. That's probably not it, but it's something like that. Like, keep your mouth shut and just, observe. And I think
Okay.
I've gotten this far 14-ish years now.
Yeah.
My 14th year of doing stunts. And a good 12 and a half, I just kept my mouth shut
Sure.
and listened and learned.
Listening, learning, commitment, just unrivaled dedication. And yeah, for you're 14 years into a career and you've been in Hollywood movies and shows. And you mentioned Jamie before, a mutual friend, and
Yeah.
you did Blind Spot for 5 seasons, which is great. Now, I kind of want to ask you a sneaky, like I'm after like like a tip, a tip or a couple of tips for people watching who want to be stunt people. Jamie mentioned, now I watched with her the finale of Blind Spot, which has just been shown.
Oh,
There was a fight scene in the top of a, like some sort of high rise, and
the church.
the system came on or something. Or was that something else? Anyway.
Yeah, the water. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like
Right.
it was in a church and yeah, water came on at the end.
Yeah. And it was an epic fight scene. And then you threw someone out a window and they died.
Yeah.
I assume that was all acting.
And they
Now,
died.
yeah. But one thing Jamie said that was
Good assumption.
she goes, oh, Heidi's so good at covering her face. She just has that thing. You never see her face. And that's one thing that makes her so good. Now you've got, being able to do martial arts, being able to spin a car around, catching on fire. You've got the acting part. How much of it is kind of like intuition? Like what little gems could you leave for people watching just to like plant the seed of cunningness as they try and add to their ability as a stunt person? Is hiding your face an important thing when it's not you as you're doubling someone else?
It is. It is. It is important, but it is important that it does not look like you're trying to hide your face. And I'm successful, I think, most of the time. But I even watch things and I'm like, oh, it looks like I'm trying to hide my face. But if you know where, so this is what I would encourage people to do, and this is what I did to get better at it. What is set up a camera? It could be your phone. Put it on a stand, and just do some fight moves like by your camera, see what it looks like with just your full face, and then try to keep your motions natural. But as as my face like move, let's say you're over here and I'm like hiding my face here and I know I have to take a reaction toward the camera. Well, I know my hair is going to eventually kind of come over my face, so it'll look more natural instead of doing something like this, like really covering my face. So finding different, now my hair's all it's like the first time I actually put product in my hair in 4 months. The idea is that you want to just practice anything that feels weird, like covering your face, putting up a camera, do it a couple of times, and then you'll have that, and you can look at it and be like, oh, that doesn't work, or oh, that kind of worked, or whatever. Or working with a friend, or if you get into a group of stunt performers, you can film each other or do a little scene or something like that. So using things like your hair can be something, or as you're moving by the camera, you know where the lens is. We all have, most of us have an idea of peripheral vision, and you can kind of tell when you're getting close to the camera and just, conveniently like moving some part of your body or your hair or a prop or a weapon or another person, putting, if I'm throwing someone and without like shrugging up too high or doing something that looks unnatural. But the only way you get better at it is just practicing. I remember hearing another one of your firesides actually was the surfer dude, and
Brock.
yeah, Brock. I'm like, that's totally a surfer name. But yeah, he was talking, he's like, the only way you get better at anything is in surfing is get in the water and do it every day. Not 2 times a week, not 3 times a week, do it every day. So having a mirror to work with is great too, just so you can catch your own eye in the mirror. And if you see your face in the mirror, the camera sees your face. If you imagine where the lens is, and a lot of times it does help to be doing this with someone, because you can't really tell exactly where you're going to be covered up or where your face is going to be covered, or if something sells, if I'm punching somebody in the face and I'm hitting them where their face is, but from that camera angle, because I'm not actually hit them, it looks like I'm punching underneath their chin or something like that. So
I love it.
That would be my tip.
I love it behind the scenes.
Tip.
We see you on camera, we see you in a Hollywood movie, and you're like, oh wow, that's so cool. She's so good at that. And then like the truth is that how you actually got there is you and a friend are in front of a camera practicing fighting whilst hiding your face. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's just hard work, and you deserve everything that that you're doing and that you will do because of it. I
Thank you. But
Go on, please.
there's so I'm kind of like ru- rushing a little bit forward here. But before all of this, before blind spot, before anything like before you build momentum with the skills and you're able to actually do the job and get in front of the camera. I mean, obviously you're always going to want to practice, but at the same time, I was hustling. I was carrying mats for coordinators. I was just like I said before, like kind of being quiet, but also being proactive in helping, bringing mats to set, building boxes. I don't know if you've ever seen someone do a high fall, but they do. One of my favorite ways to fall is into boxes because they collapse and you don't bounce out like an airbag or something like that. There are a bunch of different things
Okay.
that you can do. But for years, and to this day, as much free time or as much time as I have to assist with something or help out with something or do a project. I've been coordinating a bit more these days, and you learn so much more about the other side so that you know how to prep your stuff when you fall. That goes into, you were asking about, where can I learn how to fall correctly? Well, if you're on set all the time and you watch the guys who have been doing it for a really long time and you're throwing a mat underneath them, you're helping out a coordinator, you're helping load and unload a winch onto a truck. I remember pushing for one of the coordinators in LA. I was Pat Romano. I was pushing this 800-pound winch up a up a ramp onto his truck, and I was thinking, this is great. Like I was so excited just to be there. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I was, that inspired me too, just to be able to help. So I didn't want to, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that portion
Mm.
of getting into stunts and being willing to just, be on board wherever somebody needs you. Cause it is a team sport. It really is.
And I suppose with that, you're learning all the behind the scenes bits and pieces. And at the same
Hmm.
time, it kind of
Etiquette.
brings up this idea of relationship building. Um,
Hmm.
that doesn't go
Absolutely.
unnoticed. Like Pat Romano, the guy you just
Yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's like, oh, this girl's fantastic. I'm gonna keep her in mind for something else, and maybe that's an opportunity. And I guess
Yeah.
speak to that a little bit.
Maybe.
We're in Hollywood. A lot of people say it's who you know, what you know. There must be an element of an importance of being around, showing your face, whether it's for an agent or a potential, working with Jamie. I'm
Coordinator.
sure a lot of that was based
Yeah.
on how you guys got on. Um,
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of that, so the coordinator is more so your your job. They're in charge of who gets hired. So as much as Jamie could have liked me, the coordinator is essentially the person that would do the hiring. So not only are they coordinating the stunts, but they're kind of responsible for who comes on, and that's where the relationships, and that's in every department really. You get a, and maybe the producer would hire different departments, but the people that get seen are the people that are reputable, that have relationships with the folks that are already on board, and you're around stunts, you're around each other 12, 14 hours a day. You might not even get on camera that day. So it has to be someone that you want to hang out with, that you can rely on, that you know that their skills are up to par or beyond, or so yeah, relationships, it is who you know, but you also have to have the ability to back it up.
oh yeah, absolutely. And I hope I worded that right. I wasn't
Yeah,
suggesting that if you know people, that's enough. I just think I was trying to say it's an additional plug-in which is helpful.
correct.
Um,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's how you get the job, in my opinion. That seals the deal for sure.
so
And then your next job. So if you're the kind of person that's going to turn down a job because of a birthday party, maybe they won't think of you first next time, you know?
unless it's the stunt coordinator's birthday party, and then definitely prioritize.
In that case, you bring a bottle of booze. Yep. If they drink, if they drink.
So, okay, so we've spoken about breaking into, or no, we've spoken about developing your skills, stunt school, etc. We've spoken about breaking
Right.
in, potentially getting an agent, or maybe, or let me ask you directly,
Ah,
is getting an agent crucial?
if you want to do commercials, absolutely. If you plan on having, I think you should definitely, if once you get into the community, once you kind of start working a little bit, or maybe you want to get one right off the bat. I found it more helpful to work with people and have the references from people who have actually worked with me, and they would refer me to their agents. I had a commercial agent in New York, and I had a theatrical agent. When I started off as an actor, I went to school for acting, um, but I wasn't happy. I was so sick of going into castings and saying, "You look like a kid up here, but you have an athletic body." And I'm like, "That's what God gave me. I don't know what to tell you. I can't do much about that." That was really depressing. So doing stunts and being able to be in a little bit more of control of,
Yeah.
what your careers
Okay. Okay.
is.
No, I get it. I get it. And so, okay, so we've spoken about breaking into the professionalism of it all and all that kind of stuff. And I want to ask this. It is maybe an obvious thing, and maybe this will bring us closer to rounding this all off. But you're doing all manner of things, as we mentioned earlier. You're on fire. You're dangling out of helicopters. You're jumping on walls. You're doing all these things, killing a lot of people, and
Getting killed, yeah.
getting killed. Now that sounds dangerous, and there is obviously quite literally, it is dangerous, and you're going to get injured. So my question is, how do you, as a stunt person, maintain your longevity within your career? I mean, 14 years you've been doing it, which sounds like a long time. How have
Yeah,
you
it feels
maintained that long?
so. Like I said earlier, it's calculated risk, right? So it's you're not just dangling out of a helicopter. You're on five beaners. You have a harness on. You've practiced it low. You've practiced it on a not moving vehicle. You kind of work your way up. Doing a high fall, right? You'd start off by just jumping off a curb, then 5 feet, 10 feet, whatever. So you work your way up. So training helps with longevity because you're calculated the risk to its minimal amount for the amount of the possibility of things. Always a high possibility that there is a possibility that things could go wrong, and it's usually at a higher stake because again it's a job in and of itself because of the high risk. But maintenance is even if your stunt goes well, and which let's hope that most of it, knocking on my desk, that we're still here and we're still walking. In between the jobs, or Epsom salt is a big friend of mine. I have it I have like 5-gallon buckets, and I have a physio person, I have a chiropractor, I have in my room right here, I have about 5 different kinds of electrodes, like muscle stem machines, and my massage. I have a hypervolt and a Theragun, and so all that stuff, all that recovery is. I mean, especially working on a show like Blind Spot, I think seasons 2, 3, even 4 was they were very, very stunt heavy, and just kind of recovering to get to the next week was crucial. So injury is different than getting hurt. If you hurt, you hurt yourself, you get a bruise, you get I even call like minor fractures just getting hurt, but you can work through it. You want to minimize the injuries as much as possible. But I don't know a person who has been in it as long as I have or longer that hasn't experienced at least one major injury, broken foot, whatever. I had a very bad neck injury. I sprained my ankles a bunch. There's not much you can do when you have a really badly sprained ankle. You can't, sometimes you just can't walk on it, and you just can't work for a little while. So recovery and maintenance in that way is super important.
Physically. It sounds as though you wouldn't change it for the world anyway. And I think this is like, perhaps the perfect way to finish this off is if you're driven by passion, the injuries and the rejection from a casting or two, it's all worth it. And I'm guessing, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but maybe just as a finishing piece for everyone watching who is interested in doing this, what would you just leave as one last comment, a seed to be planted in the minds of those who are curious?
If you want it badly enough, you'll find a way to get there, and you'll find the people and the things that you need to do to get there. I kind of gave you a couple examples of what I did, but I honestly wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't trade any of those experiences, starving at night sometimes, but yeah, if you want it, you can have it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Heidi. That was so lovely. Thank you for revealing a lot from behind the scenes. And yeah, I think it's so helpful for all those budding stunt people out there.
All right.